Dear guests, dear friends, dear fans from Tech and Law TV, welcome to our March edition, today live from our Düsseldorf office. And today we talk about AI. Everyone talks about ChatGPT, about BART, about artificial intelligence and how this changes our professional life. And we look to the Silicon Valley, but we can also look to Cologne because we have a wonderful leading AI communication provider there, DeepL, and we want to talk about with DeepL. We want to talk about the new EU regulatory regime, GDPR, e-privacy, AI Act, Data Act, DMA, DSA, DGA. It's really confusing, and I'm very happy and proud that we have Jarek here as our guest today. That's, or to say it precisely, Dr. Jaroslaw Kutylowski. For us, Jarek, he's the founder of DeepL and also the current CEO. And we have Dr. Benedikt Kohn from our Düsseldorf office. He's an AI expert in that area. And Ben, thank you very much for your contributions with respect to the legal aspects. So, welcome to our show, and now let's go. Jarek, first question to you. Tell us about DeepL. We as lawyers, we love your product, but it's going to be you who explains exactly what you're doing, your startup story, where you stand today, and where you want to go.
First and foremost, thank you for having me. It's a great pleasure to be here with you and be able to discuss how AI and legal or tech and legal overlap with each other. With DeepL, we are really a very technological company. This is where we've started around 5 years ago, 6 years ago, and we've started with making sure that we can just provide the best translation technology in the world, and have been layering on top of that all of that is necessary to serve companies like Taylor Wessing, like you, to make sure that our translations are not only accurate, but that they're also secure, and that we can work in many, many languages and provide those to everybody, but also to be able to interface with our customers. I think we've gone through this very typical route that many tech companies are going, starting with a tech product, developing the product, adding on top more and more commercial aspects to that, to be able to handle our customers and provide the services that they really need. And this year we've started with a new product. We've added DeepL Write to our portfolio, a product that helps you writing in your own language or in other foreign languages. So we're kind of at the step of turning to a multi-product company and helping our users even more with their communication needs.
Yeah. For those who haven't tried DeepL, now comes the little commercial aspect here. Please try this out. We love it. We just pour our contracts into this magic tool, and suddenly we have it translated in another language, and we can just do a kind of sanity check, and then off we go. So it really works fantastically. But do you also earn money with this?
We do. Actually, the company is profitable since quite some time, which is maybe a little bit unusual for tech companies, actually. But we've been always pretty focused on the fact that we want to make sure that we see how well the product is perceived in the market, and whether it actually works, whether we can monetize it. So there's a free tier, and which basically everybody can use, as you just so kindly advertised. Just go to DeepL and translate. But there's also a paid product which gives you the ability to translate more, to adapt your style of the translation, to make sure that certain privacy guarantees are also fulfilled, etc., etc. So yeah, definitely there's a business model behind that.
Yeah, perfect. Actually, I think we have your premium product, so we pay. so
This
it's
is,
not for
this,
free.
this is good.
But-
From a privacy perspective, it's very good that you have that one.
And what puzzles me is, I mean, you're based out of Cologne. Usually we deal with Silicon Valley-based companies coming into Europe, and now we have an AI company in Cologne. Is there any particular different mindset if you compare a German-based AI company from a more or less US-based company?
I think in general, like the tech scene in Europe, even though it's developing, and in Germany it's growing very, very fast, it's still smaller than Silicon Valley. So for a company that is based and funded in Germany, there's obviously additional hurdles. Like there's not so much talent that is experienced in providing such large services available. We have to hire all across Europe to make sure that we get the support and the team members into the company. On the other hand, of course, Europe is a little bit more regulated than the US is. So there is definitely some more questions that have to be asked then. I think that hinders a company in the very, very early development stages a bit. There's just more that we have to consider at the beginnings, but then gives us far-reaching advantages in the European market, just because we already have a lot of those boxes checked that you have to check in order to be successful in the European market. And it's not only about the European market. Like we are pretty successful in Japan, which is also a country which looks pretty closely at what European regulations are or mimics those. So there is differences, there is drawbacks at the beginnings, but then it is also pretty advantageous to be in the market directly.
You benefit from the, let's say, German/EU golden standard, and with this one you can roll out your products globally more easily.
Basically, yes.
Before we come to the legal hurdles, and then I ask Ben about the legal hurdles we maybe have, or let's call it challenges. One last first question to you, Jarek. How do you use artificial intelligence in the neural networks? How does it? Can you explain this to, let's say, us laymen here?
This is a tough one. Like usually we'd need now 5 years of computer science lectures. So let's try to squeeze that in a little bit. Okay. How usually neural networks work nowadays is that you're presenting this mathematical machinery, which to some extent resembles what might potentially be happening in our brains. It's based on mathematics, all of that, but it's a large computational machine, and basically we are giving it examples of how it should perform its tasks. And in our case, that's translation. And we are giving it examples on how particular sentences, text, documents should be translated. And the neural network needs to learn from that. We show it an input, it produces an output. If it does it wrong, we correct it. And from these corrections, it is basically learning all of the time. Not differently than what happens when we are children and we are learning a language. Just it's modeled in mathematics and executed by a computer. And then like a lot of magic comes in, making sure that this architecture of this neural network is efficient so that it can learn very well which kind of data is being selected, how we reward the neural network for that. But at the end, it's basically teaching it.
Okay, so it's all about learning and teaching and our experience of our childhood. And Ben, we hear this quite often from AI providers if they ask our clients, or if they are our clients, like, oh, can I have your data? Our product only wants to learn a little bit with your data. So that sounds, I mean, that's the core of AI, of course, but I could imagine that there are also, let's say, legal hurdles, as you say, obstacles, challenges. When you think about a product like DeepL, what is what you have to consider from a legal point of view?
As Jarek described, we're talking about AI, and the problem with AI is that it relies on the processing of huge amounts of data, and sometimes, or some of the time, even most personal data. So what we have to look for is data security and data privacy, first and foremost. And if we want to look a little bit further ahead in the future, then also the Artificial Intelligence Act will come to mind, but it is still in the legislative process and will be not live until like 2024. So this should be on the back of our mind, but first and foremost, complying with data security and data privacy is very important. And yeah, as Axel said, one of the core principles is, for example, purpose limitation. If data that is collected is transferred or is used for another purpose. For example, with AI, it's usually training the AI model. This would be another purpose than the collecting of data. So the purposes have to be made very clear at the beginning. This would be one of the challenges. Then, of course, the principle of data minimization and storage limitation. As I said, AI relies on the processing of a lot of data, though. So this is definitely a challenge for AI companies. And of course, transparency. AI is constantly learning and evolving, so to provide transparency is also very hard for some companies. Regarding data security, companies have to ensure through technical and organizational measures that their data processing is secure, that there's no unauthorized access to the data breaches. These are all very important legal aspects.
So you have purpose or purpose limitation, you have data minimization, you have all over transparency together with the purpose, data security, and I think I was missing one of the aspects you just mentioned.
I told about data minimization.
Data minimization, of course. And now the challenge for you, how do you deal with these compliance requirements, if at all?
We do. We do, of course. Tricky question. I think like the good thing is that we've kind of set up the culture of the company also around data security, and it's not hard to do that if you're sitting in Germany. This is like one of those advantages that which are additional work, but also make sure that that the company achieves a certain standard. So we've been always thinking about how do we secure our data, how do we make sure that all of the data of our customers is private, and of course we need to also process data, and the threshold that we've chosen is that we are processing the data or using the data that is being used in our free service for improving our AI, for training, and whatever is being translated in the premium version of the product is not used for that at all. So it's like basically just getting into the system, being translated, and then and then we forget it.
So sorry to interrupt. So you separate on a separate server. You have the, let's say, content you get from users who are using your free version, and then you have a separate server for those, let's say, law firms and whatsoever who are using your paid services, and they are kind of disconnected, the two servers.
Exactly, they're separated. That might be even like a geographical separation where the data centers are in different places. Doesn't have to be that way, but in general, those guarantees for privacy are different depending on which level of service.
And you have own service, and you're not on the cloud on someone else's server infrastructure. Yes,
this is an advantage that we have. Like, we are a company that is kind of owning the full stack. We own the technology, we own the servers, we are placing them in a data center that is obviously provided by somebody who knows how to build buildings, but we are administering those servers on our own, and therefore, like, usually even when we are entering data processing agreements, we do not have any subcontractors there at all.
No subcontractors, and last question that we got, and where you located, where the server's located, where's the data flowing to?
So we are using data centers in Finland, in Sweden, and in Iceland. So these are the 3 locations that we are using, especially like Finland and Sweden being located in the EU, which is good from GDPR, from a GDPR perspective, but also, as you might notice, in northern countries where there is an abundance of green energy, we are all of our data centers there are relying on fully green energy. So that's kind of the typical place where you're putting these high computational loads.
Sounds like a dream from a legal perspective, I must say. Maybe that's really an advantage to be based out of Europe in that respect for us as lawyers in that area. That makes many things more feasible. No data transfer out of the EU EEA, own servers, no subcontractors. These are our typical hurdles we are facing, Ben. Do you have, let's say, additional or more general, from a high level, practical advice how to deal with all those new EU digital law requirements you already mentioned?
As you said, there are many new regulations coming from the EU, DMA, DSA, Data Act, AI Act. And so it's sometimes not easy to deal with all those regulations at the same time, but one good news is that companies can do some things to make it easier for them to comply with all the new laws. And the first thing I would say is, I know this will sound like common sense to you, but complying with existing regulation. Because this not only saves you like lots of time and money, you don't have to fight authorities or in court, but you can also use existing compliance structures for these new regulations. If you have robust processes in place, clear responsibilities in your company, if you have awareness both on the employee level as well as management, transparency, sound documentation, all these things you will need also for new regulation. So then you already have a head start. And if you're looking at, for example, the GDPR and AI Act, 2 laws I'm dealing with, there are even some concrete synergies between those 2 laws. For example, according to GDPR, you as a company have to keep records of processing activities, while in the AI Act, sometimes for high-risk AI systems, there is the need for technical documentation. So if you as a company already have detailed records of processing activities in place, updated, well maintained, then it's very easy for you to just identify AI systems, add another page or add another column with technical documentation according to AI Act, for example, and then you already have your structure in place to comply with the AI Act. And if you have nothing, you have to start from scratch. It's just more effort, more time and money. So this would be one advice from my side.
Let's stick to the AI Act for a second. You said companies should have it in the back of their head, and it's coming into force only in 2024. Actually, I think that's pretty soon. So I would rather recommend to have this not in the back, or move it from the back of your head to your forehead. And do you have it already on the radar? Do you have some compliance strategies? I mean, how to deal with all those regulations Ben has been mentioning, and in particular with the AI Act, or are you just trust your law firms? Which is also sufficient, of course.
I think we are somewhere in the process of moving that from the back of the mind towards the front. And I think Ben had really a good point here. At some point in time, as a company, you're developing so much compliance documentation processes. Either way, be it for GDPR, but we're also ISO compliant. We are working on SOX 2 compliancy. All of those fit nicely together in general. Like there's certain special aspects in every law, but at the end, if you keep up with this one step at a time, and as laws come out, you handle them, then within a company, you're establishing this overall framework to deal with all of that. And sometimes if new laws come in, it's as easy as doing like a quick sweep of what's already there, filling in a few gaps, but some parts might be already covered.
Interesting point. I never heard someone saying that all the regulations are fitting nicely together. We sometimes say this like a nerd aspect from lawyers, but that's good to hear, and that's indeed, I think that's a really good idea. I mean, if you have this ROPA or record of data processing in place, if you have this anyhow, why not having synergies here and using it in a wider context?
Yeah. At the end, our customers are requesting security guarantees from us too, and basically the governments are doing that too. So quite often these requirements are really similar to each other.
So let's say, you take the bull by the horns and you're doing it. I mean, others are having more like the ostrich strategy. I don't know if you can really translate this into English, so you don't stick your head in the sand. You are, I don't want to say embracing the compliance, but you just deal with this.
It's part of our work, basically.
Yeah, and maybe it's fair because, I mean, we are moving in a digital area and you need some laws and regulations there as well. And that's actually what we are facing at the moment. That's my personal opinion here. And by the way, when we talk about regulation, do the two of you, I mean, is this a good idea to kind of pre-regulate the market? Ben was mentioning all the new EU acts we are facing. And it's a little bit like we first have the law and then have, let's say, the business, or should it be the other way around? You just move fast and break things, so you start to do stuff, and then only if it hurts, you have regulation on top. What is the right strategy?
It's hard to say whether there's a right or wrong there. I think it really depends on the case, and like it's important to be cautious in those areas where it can hurt really a lot. If you look at high risk areas, if you look at medical AI, all of that, I think we should probably be a little bit more cautious there, to be honest. And this is my personal opinion, also like looking from the perspective of the society and in general. I think in other parts where the harm that can be done is rather low, probably trying to be a little bit more aggressive there and seeing what breaks and regulating a little bit later is probably something that leads to more innovation and actually like an improved life for all of us.
Okay, that's a very balanced answer in that respect. But is there also something which you really hate, which bothers you, so that you can say, well, I can somehow accept the AI Act and all that, but this goes too far?
I think what will be really hard sometimes to achieve is like really transparency, and like I do understand that we as humans want to understand how a particular decision has been made, but it's also like if we look at ourselves, it's sometimes also hard to describe for us why we've taken a certain decision. It's sometimes a gut feeling, it's sometimes just based on our experience and what we're doing. So I see this as being maybe not something I'm angry about, but something that I see pretty challenging in the future for AI, especially this kind of very evolved AI that we are building and that our other companies are building nowadays that bases on neural networks.
Interesting. And from your perspective as a legal expert, I mean, everyone would expect no lawyers' complaints about new law. But maybe you also see as an expert areas where you say, well, that's probably from the architecture or from the whole approach not so good.
I see two tendencies I really don't like, and the first one would be laws getting pretty vague. I don't know if it's that the legislator wants to get ahead of the technical progress because it's just too rapid, and then the definitions are vague. For example, the definition of AI in the AI Act. And these, of course, makes it very hard for companies to comply with the law because the law is ambiguous, it's vague. Companies have to put very much time and effort to dealing with these laws. This I really don't like. And the other one would be, I don't know if it's technical errors, but sometimes there are inconsistencies within laws or some laws are inconsistent with other laws. And this also is a huge challenge, obviously, because then you really don't know how you can comply with both of those. I mean, we're talking about drafts at the moment, so this will probably be fixed, but yeah, it's something.
But isn't that in the nature of an act, that an act in the beginning is a little bit vague, and then over the years it becomes more solid with case law and all others? I mean, just imagine it would be super precise, then probably 1 year ahead it's outdated. So maybe it's like with the civil code. The civil code is from 1900, and I'm sure that in the beginning of the civil code there had been lots of questions because it's very abstract, and we are facing the same now. We have all the new laws, and we don't really know where this develops to, and it needs a decade until it really functions.
Especially in the digital age, because, as I said, the progress is pretty rapid. But I mean, too vague and broad definitions are hard for companies. But we will see maybe if court rulings come in, if guidelines from authorities come in, this may not be a problem any longer.
They are hard. I can confirm that, and this vagueness is a problem in general. And I also think that this digitalization and how you mentioned how fast it is now with the advent of AI and what we're seeing in this world happening, it's going to accelerate even more. So this is going to be even more a challenge for the legal system to keep up with that actually.
Yeah, but obviously it doesn't keep you away from doing business, the vagueness. You go and you look and you adjust, obviously. And that's, I think, would be your recommendation as well. Or would your recommendation be stop and wait?
No. I mean, from a business perspective,
no.
Just do it.
It's just risks.
Yeah, it's all about risk measurement and obviously it would be good to have a clear guidance, but I think it would be unfair to ask for this from the lawgiver. In that respect, it's nearly impossible to achieve this. But what is probably possible is like the outlook of DeepL. What are your plans? What do you want to achieve with DeepL? Is it a fast exit? Is it world domination? What are you looking for?
I've never been asked if we are aiming for world domination. That's the first time. I think we've been setting up the company for the long term, and we are a research-based company. So I think translation is probably not our last word, and we'll be further developing into new areas and trying to see where can we help our users with AI products, especially when it comes to language and communication and that area. And like us launching DeepL Right is kind of part of that strategy, but we'll be evolving that. But I can't be more particular about what next products are going to come out.
So there's a good old German Mittelstand tradition, not the fast exit and not the world domination, but sustainability and long-term growth. But I think you don't.
I think a little bit faster growth than the typical German Mittelstand tradition.
But I mean, what is German Mittelstand? It's often under the radar, but and you are now above the radar actually. But it's very successful and very big. But I mean, that was just a joke. Where you're going to, and Ben, from your perspective, the next 10, 20 years, helicopter view. What do you think is going to happen? Will we have like every 2 years 20 new EU laws, or was this just now a big step from the EU regulator, and there will be like a decade time for all of us to digest this?
I think there will be more legislation from the EU, and first because new technical progress always will lead to new regulation. It's just natural, I think, because not everything that can be done should be permitted in a society. And then with digital products that are usually provided across borders, the EU has an incentive to harmonize laws. So I guess on the EU level, we will see more laws, we will see more directives and stuff, but maybe less from the national member states.
Mm-hmm.
This would,
So even more activity in that area. I thought probably there will be something like a pause or a break so that we really can digest this. Anyway, keeps us busy. So, Jarek, last question for you, a very personal question. Now we have ChatGPT, we have Bart, we have DeepL. What does it mean for us, for lawyers? Will you see, looking ahead another decade, that you have a legal problem and you ask ChatGPT how to solve it, and then you translate it into 20 languages and making Ben and myself jobless?
I think that's probably not going to be the case, but I think both you and Ben will have to learn on how to use all of those new tools. I think we as humans will be faced quite a big challenge on how to use AI, how to embed it in our life, and those tools are sometimes really not so easy to understand. It's not easy to understand, like, where do they make mistakes, where do they do not make mistakes, what do you have to check. So there's quite a challenge lying ahead of us in order to learn how to use AI in our business, but also like in private life, actually.
So I understand between the lines, if we don't learn how to use it, then we might run into a problem. But thank you very much.
Thank you very
much, Jarek. Thank you very much, Ben, for this very, very interesting, stimulating discussion on AI, on DeepL, and everything what we are challenging and what is ahead. And thank you very much, dear guests, friends and fans of Tech and Law TV, for listening. This is also available on video, and please stay tuned. There will be another edition in April with another interesting digital topic for you and us to learn about. So see you next time. Bye-bye. Have a good day. Au revoir.